YouTube, this is Global Gaming Initiative, and today I'm going to be going over a Technologies and Ideas tutorial guide on Europa Universalis 4. This guide will cover all of the technologies you can choose, the different types of technologies, the different penalties that different countries get for technologies, technology groups, and ideas when you want to choose them, and how they are best used. You can see the entire world can be chosen in EU4, and every country or groups of countries have different access to different technology groups. The first one is Western, and that incorporates most of Western Europe, all of Western Europe actually, with the exception of Grenada, and some countries like the Knights and Rhodes, Sweden, and the Teutonic Order and the Livonian Order, who are pretty far to the east. That gives no penalty for technology costs, standard at 100% cost. Next you have Eastern Tech Group, which is like Poland, Lithuania, Hungary, the Balkan states excluding the Ottomans, the Byzantines, Trebizond, Georgia, Circassa, Muscovy, all of its subjects, Novgorod, and that's going to give you a 20% increase in cost. That means your total cost for technology will be 120%. Moving on from that, you have the Anatolian Tech Group, and that's going to give you a 25% cost increase, so 5% more than Eastern, and that's going to include the Ottomans, Karaman, Ramazan, Gulak-Gadir, Kandar, and Ak-Koyunlu. I probably butchered that, and I apologize if that offends you, but I'm terrible with pronunciation of names, although I try. Moving on from that, you have the Western Tech Group, or Western Muslim Tech Group, which is a 40% increase in cost, and that's going to include nations like Grenada in Western Europe, all of North Africa, all of Arabia, and some nations like Bakulistan and Adal and Morsangeli and Meran in North Africa, or I guess that's East Africa. Moving on from that, the next tech group that there is Indian with a 50% increase in costs, and that's going to include all of the Indian subcontinent, including Ceylon and the Maldives. Then you have the Chinese tech group, a 60% increase, so very closely related to Indian tech group. But still, 60% increase versus 0% increase, that's a significant debuff. Which means that the farther west you go, the more you want to westernize, and which is the process that a nation has to go through when they're not a Western tech group to become a part of the Western tech group. And this is to symbolize the rest of the world falling behind Europe as the age of colonization dawns on the world. After the Chinese tech group, which you can see incorporates even the Japanese, and which I'm sure is historically pleasing, you have the nomadic tech group, and which is a 75% cost increase, so 15% more than the Chinese. The nomads include Crimea, Ankara, Koyunlu, the Timurids, Oryat hordes, and most of this region up here, Jinzhou, Gorchin, Ixi, Yaren, Mongolia, Uzbek, and the Golden Horde, of course, Kazan and Nogai. Now, take note that Kazan, with its 75% increase in tech cost, is bordering Muscovy, who has a 20% increase. That 55% difference in tech cost allows Muscovy to pull ahead as the game goes on, but still allows the hordes, or the nomads, to be relevant early game when everyone's on the same playing field. And that's overall, that's just to influence how Europe pulls ahead of the rest of the world. Then you have the tech group of Sub-Saharan Africa, which is a 60% increase in cost. Notice it's the same exact tech cost as Chinese, and still less than nomadic, which I think is kind of funny that Sub-Saharan Africa is depicted in the game as being the same technological level as the Chinese Ming Dynasty. Um, you can let me know what you think, but that just seems a little bit anachronistic to me. Then you go to the New World, where you have the Andean Culture Group, Tech Group, in which is 150% increase, so twice the nomadic cost. And that is the case for all of the Americas, with the exception of North American tribes. So Central and South America have a 150% increase in tech cost, meaning by the time the New World, Europe gets there, they're pretty much already poor as can be and behind in tech immensely. And then North America comes in last with 250% increase in technologies. And then when Portugal comes and colonizes, your 250% increase in technology cost means you have nothing when compared to Europe. So that's how the game kind of relates it. Some things I don't agree with, like Sub-Saharan Africa being on the same level as the Ming Dynasty, but that's how the game represents it, so that's how I'm going to go with it. I'm not going to argue with that. The developers obviously had something in mind when they did it, and I'm going to go along with that. So loading into the game here, I'll go over the technologies, kind of what their bonuses are roughly, and when you want to take them. So here I chose France because, well, why not? They're a good example of a Western tech group and what the Western tech group has access to. So first off, it should be mentioned that ideas and technologies, you always want to take a technology over taking an idea. And that's because technologies in the long run are going to be much more helpful than that little bonus you'll get from an idea. So administrative technologies, you can see I'm Western. Administrative technologies starts off for all of Eurasia as 3, and the New World as 2 for all technologies. So if you're ahead of the times, if I were to get a technology right now and no one else were, I would get a plus 20% to production efficiency while I was ahead of the times. And that's going to allow me to have an increase in income from production pretty much for spending my administrative points on technology, which is an amazing bonus, but you have to keep in mind that it goes away as soon as you catch up, as the rest of the world catches up, or you fall behind in tech. Administrative technology is primarily focused around the integration of new lands, buildings that revolve around taxes and taxation, unlocking of idea groups, production, and administrative things like improving your government type. And you can see here, I am currently a feudal monarchy with bonuses towards national manpower modifier and income from vassals. However, I can upgrade that at a certain point. I guess it doesn't show it here, but at Tech 12, I'll be able to unlock the administrative monarchy, which gives a reduction in autonomy. It gives me increased production, national production. It gives me some, I believe, prestige too. Well, I could be wrong on that part. And then you also get to unlock new republics and tribal democracies as the game goes on. You can see administrative efficiency is the first bonus, unlocked at level 17, 23, and 27. Increased by 20% each. That's going to make it cheaper for you to core new provinces by 20% each, and which is an amazing bonus as the game gets later and later. Development efficiency is unlocked also later on in the game, 10% each at 17, 23, and 27. That's going to make it cheaper for you to develop your provinces over time. Number of idea groups available. You get an idea group every so many technologies, or you get access to a new idea group every so many technologies, and those will give you significant bonuses. And that's why you want to just kind of stay ahead of the times in technology and administrative technology. So you get access to new idea groups, so you can get that production efficiency bonus, so you can get the edge technologically on your neighbors. than your adversaries. Production efficiency increase throughout the game. That's going to increase. Throughout the game that's going to increase the amount of money you get from production as the game goes on. Buildings are unlocked throughout the game as well, starting with churches and workshops, in which increase the amount of income you get from taxes and production from a single individual province, to courthouses, in which lower national unrest, to counting houses, in which lower inflation. And then you also get a one-hit wonder at level 15 Force March, in which allows you for a small military point cost to cause units to move twice as fast around the field of battle. So that means that instead of getting there on the 20th, it will get there in half the time. So probably like the 16th. Moving on to diplomatic tech group, you can see it starts off as at 3 as well, which is the same for all of Eurasia, and it's 2 for the New World. If I'm ahead of the time in diplomatic technology, I get 20% trade efficiency, in which takes off the losses that you would incur in trade. Diplomatic technology is centered around primarily trade and naval combat and colonization, along with the integration of vassals. So, with that in mind, you see that you get access to early carracks, in which are heavy ships, barks, in which are light ships, galleys, in which are inner sea ships, Mediterranean ships, and cogs, in which are troop carriers. These will upgrade throughout the game as the game goes on. You actually can see that here. Those are the bonuses that they get, and that increases over time. So first you get trade efficiency, in which it increases throughout the game, starting early and as the game goes on. That's going to increase the income you get, and when you add that into the plus 20% there, it ends up being a really nice bonus and makes it worthwhile to stay ahead of the times in diplomatic technology. Naval maintenance increases over time as well, and which is actually a debuff. It is meant to reflect the increasing costs as navies became more and more nationalized and more centralized, and as a result became more expensive to maintain. Naval morale increase. The increase in naval morale allows your ships to stay on the battlefield longer and pull out victories more efficiently. As trade range increases, that means your influence throughout the world in trade is going to increase as well. That's actually a very significant bonus. But you get access to it throughout the game, so it's not something you want to worry about getting, but it's just a nice byproduct. Colonial range increase is great for colonizers primarily, and increases early on in the game, and then hits again in the mid-game throughout. You'll see that level 3 to level 7 gap is the biggest. And that is going to allow me, or any colonizing nation, to get to the New World easier. Global settler increase increases the amount of settlers that each colony has, and increases the speed at which that colony is colonized completely. The buildings range from the marketplace, in which centers around increasing trade, to the shipyard, in which increases naval production speed, naval repair speed, and value of the province, to things like the stock exchange and the grand shipyard, in which do those things on a massive scale. Merchants at level 1, everyone has it already. It allows you to place a merchant in a trade node. Reduce naval attrition at level 22 means that your ships will incur very little attrition moving anywhere in the world. Makes the world suddenly smaller, and combat becomes much more global at that point. And client states, last but not least, at level 23, allows you to take part of your nation that's not fully integrated or not a part of your accepted cultures, and create another nation that's completely subservient to you, thereby increasing your overall power. And that nation is customizable. Moving on to military technologies are probably the most important, even though they give the least amount of bonuses. And that's because it increases everything to do with your fighting machine and nothing else. So there is no bonus or penalty for being ahead or behind in the time. However, that being said, it's still worthwhile being ahead in the times, because that means you're going to be ahead of your neighbors. So you get to unlock new infantry as the game progresses. And you unlock new cavalry, and you unlock artillery at level 7. Infantry are going to be better during the shock phase, or best during the shock phase. And when I say shock, I mean fire phase. Cavalry are going to be better in the shock phase, and artillery are going to be better during the fire phase, but get to fire from the back line. But they're also the most expensive to maintain, so you can't just have an army of artillery, cavalry, or infantry alone. You have to mix and match and have a good army combination in order to be the most effective. Improve flanking range. Flanking range is the ability for your men to outflank the enemy and to maneuver around them in the combat phase, and that'll be covered in a later tutorial video. Land morale increases the strength of your men on land, and you get access to it throughout the game with a large mid-game pause. And that's going to allow you to, throughout the game, increases the amount of morale. Your guys are going to be able to fight longer, harder, and more effectively. Supply limit increases by 50% throughout the game. That's going to allow you to have 50% more men on any given province without incurring attrition. Moving on to military tactics, which is loosely related to discipline and increases the combat effectiveness of your men in the battle. Combat width allows you to have more men on the front line at any given point in time, and that's going to allow you to essentially outnumber at any given point in time your opponent, which is an amazing bonus to have. Buildings. Buildings from the military tech group involve things like castles and fortresses that increase your local defense and stop enemies from moving around you, to barracks, in which give you access to more manpower, to regimental camps and training fields that give you access to a larger supply of men in the field at once. That's all for part 1 of my idea and tech group training video, and join me back for part 2. See ya, YouTube.